Sarah, didn't you make this video already? Yes, my astute little audience member, I did. But that video was 8 months ago, and before I had much experience with original species, open species, regulated, and closed. That video was before I even made my first original species video. That video also had mistakes in it. And my opinion on closed species has since changed thanks to talking to someone who knew more about them than me.
Hey, what up, it's your boy Nick.
Anyway, hello everybody! My name is Sera and I've come from space with videos for your face. I make a series here where I go into detail about various original species, their rules, design, lore, and more. I've covered 20 in videos, and more than 40 total through live streams, contests, and stuff like that. So if you came here to learn about this stuff, then you're in the right place. Today, we're talking about what is an original species, open, closed, and regulated species. This is actually a pretty simple topic, but when I first made this video last year, I didn't have much experience with closed species in general, so I didn't fully cover how these communities worked. This topic is simple at first, but the previous methods of which we defined these don't actually work anymore. Previously, they were defined by how many rules they have, which doesn't really work, as many species that exist, real or original, have rules that make them that species. So I've had to change my definition of these categories, so if you think you know the answer, you might be surprised. So what is an original species? Original species are a fictional species made up by people on the internet. Original species exist in a lot of forms, and the definition I used here could be used to define creatures made in speculative biology or speculative evolution projects like Amphiterra, a speculative biology project about frogs. But that's not the case. When people say original species, they mean species that are made up with the intent to make original characters that are of that species. The frogs on Amphiterra are cool, but I don't think anyone is trying to make a Trogglefolk OC, even though they are super cute and there's a lot you can do with them. So original species almost always refer to communities making characters that are anthropomorphic, meaning that they are animals with human characteristics like human thought, sentience, or walks upright and lives in a society. Even though anthropomorphic is synonymous with the word furry in the furry fandom, not all original species owners and creators identify as furries. Some of these species spread so far that people learn about them before they even think about becoming a furry, or non-furries will make OCs of them. The important thing about the term furry is you're only a member of the fandom if you say you are. An example of an original species that people may identify with but not consider themselves as a furry is protogens. Even though us in the furry fandom consider these furries, many protogen don't consider themselves to be furries. There are a lot of original species that aren't bipedal, like bay foxes. I imagine there's a lot of bay fox members that don't consider themselves furries just because they're fancy foxes. While they may be anthropomorphic, I think a lot of non-furries would be like, "That's a cute fox, I want to make one." These would be considered gateway communities because give them enough time and they'll probably learn about and become a furry. Anyway, original species for our definition is an imaginary creature made with the intent for people to make original characters out of them. Species that are original species are things like Tebas, Vernids, bay foxes, water dogs, gem raptors, wicker beasts, protogen, primogen, Dutch angel dragons, and much more. But not all of these species are made with the intent for just anyone to make a character of them. Some of them have restrictions and rules for design. Original species are broken into 3 kinds: open, regulated, and closed. What is an open species? Original species that have little to no rules for creation are usually referred to as open species. These are species that you can make a character of that don't have many rules for design, community participation, creation, and aren't super concerned about what is and isn't canon for their species. Personally, I don't believe true open species really exist because, by this definition, every original species you encounter will have some rules to some extent. Species that are synonymous with open are species like Vernid, Protogen, Teba, and Manokits. But many of these species have a lot of rules for their design, lore, and canon. For example, even though Manokits are considered open, they don't reproduce the way mammals do. They have to use magic to reproduce, tribal ones can't be in images of them swimming, and lots of rules like that. Many have rules against magic, and some aren't allowed to poop. So if we define openness by how many rules it has, you'll find that there isn't such thing as a true open species. So my definition of openness hinges on the availability and enforcement of character design. If you don't need permission, you don't need to go through an approval process, there isn't a master list, there isn't a list on traits that you can add, doesn't have a currency for funny money systems, and you don't need money to make one, then it is an open species. You can make a Protogen, Tiba, Dutch Angel Dragon, Manokit, Gem Raptor, Vernid, etc. without having to do any of those things. What is a regulated species? Going by the definition I used for open species, you can imagine what a regulated species might be like. A regulated species is like an open species, but is restricted in one or more ways. Basically, a regulated species is a species that has a lore and design that it's important that people stick to, and will likely incorporate an approval process. A good example of a regulated species is bay foxes. The big thing that makes them a regulated species is that they have a master list. A master list is a list of every officially made or approved character and is added to the list to prove that they went through all the official channels to make one. To your left, I'm showing the master list for my species, Mera, which is a closed species, and we'll get to that soon. But master lists are very common in communities that use a currency, and that's because all transactions made with this currency need to be logged. The master list says which traits they used, and those traits usually cost the funny money that I was talking about. The funny money itself could be earned by contributing to the community by drawing gift art, making bases, drawing the monthly prompt, and things like that. But the currency can sometimes be bought for those who want to skip the work. There are other aspects that make a regulated species regulated, but the most important factor is an approval process. You'd make the character, then send it in, and someone on staff will either approve or deny it. If approved, they'll usually add it to the master list, and then yours is an official one. This might seem like a lot of work, but it's actually pretty easy. You just fill out the form, and if it's good, they copy and paste it. It takes maybe 5 minutes. These master lists are important because someone could steal your character, but the master list says your name on the page and not theirs. But this also prevents people from breaking the rules of design and claiming it's official because an official one would have a matching number. Bay Fox's, our example, has traits, funny money, master lists, and an approval process, but anyone can make one, meaning it's still regulated. What is a closed species? Closed species come in a few types, but usually a closed species is a species that you're not allowed to make a character of at all, not without paying for it, or without going through the proper channels necessary to earn or be given one. Thankfully, I have examples of most of these styles. These are Primogen. These are a species that was a precursor to the Protogen. I went over them briefly in my video on Protogen and Primogen. Primogen were created by Malice Risu, and people fell for them immediately. However, Malice made these characters with the intent to be a unique and original species meant for them and their closest friends. They would be bugged about it pretty regularly, so Malice made the Protogen as a way to meet people halfway. They're a sort of spin-off series set in the same universe like Joni Loves Chachi, except people liked Protogen. That was not a good example. I'm not even old enough to have seen Happy Days or Joni Loves Chachi. Protogen is like the Cleveland Show, if people liked it more than Family Guy. Anyway, the Primogen are a closed species, and were limited only to Malice and their closest friends. Usually this is a kind of closed species people are okay with, because everyone is excluded from it for the most part. Later though, Primogen were available as adopts, and you could have your own with the correct amount of cheddar, which is another kind of closed species, the adopt or custom only. These tend to run on the expensive side because of their extreme rarity. The other style of clothes I mentioned I call the hoop style because you have to jump through a series of hoops in order to earn one or be allowed to make it. You might remember the Bay Foxes I mentioned earlier. They had traits and funny money, but they had free options where you could make a Bay Fox without doing fan art or contributing to the community, which makes them technically open, but with the master list and money system, that makes them regulated. If you weren't allowed to make a free version of the Bay Fox and could only earn traits through community contributions, this would be considered a closed species. I have 2 examples of this one, and one of them is Chimerion, and one is my species, Mera. In Mera, we have something called a bond. It's like a battle pass. You need to draw gift art, write stories, make art for traits, give suggestions, etc. in order to earn pips, which level up your bond. Pips are like experience points. When you level your bond to max, you can make your Mera, and I'll add it to the master list. You're not supposed to make a Mera before that point. I give you the character, traits, and a fun community to be in, and in exchange, you make some fan art for other people in the community, and I get your art and put it in my videos. If you made a character without following my hoops method, you wouldn't have a Mera on the master list, and everyone in the community would know that it's not an official one. Once you finish the bond, any extra pips you earned are turned into platinum pips, which can be used to buy more characters, spirits, traits, etc. You can also buy an adopt from me or an approved artist and skip the bond process entirely. You need to do the starter bond because the seasonal bonds might need you to have a character that exists already to add more onto them. I also have a premium version with a bonus character and more rare traits on it if you want to pay 10 USD for that. The other example is what Chimerion does. And it's the same except they use currencies instead of a battle pass. I'm the only one who uses a battle pass as far as I know. In Chimerion, you contribute art and writing to the community and they give you dirt pearls. The pearls are used to buy traits. You can also use real money to buy traits, and you can buy an adopt to get in the community to skip all that. But the adopts are pretty expensive. But Chimerion also do a regular raffle to give people an opportunity to get a Chimerion for free. My method is the same, except I don't have a raffle option because my community hasn't been around long enough and isn't that popular. That's pretty much it for how these work. Mine is a little complicated because the system hasn't been around all that long, so I'm, working out the kinks. But basically, you're earning a currency to buy levels that give you rewards. That was a lot of information though, so let's do a quick recap before we wrap it up. An original species is a species that is made up with the intent for people to make characters of them. Open, regulated, and closed are all the levels of availability these original species have. Open means little to no rules with high availability, often being that you can make a character of this species as long as you follow the design rules. Regulated is like open, they have free ways to get in and make a character, and a master list to show you're an official member. Closed means you're not supposed to make a character without buying one, participating in the community, earning one, or without being given one. And that's it. Hopefully I don't have to make an update to this one, but I feel like it better defines these kinds of original species. My first one was a really basic understanding of it, like a purely outsider's perspective, like an explain like I'm 5 sort of kind of thing. But this is the full definition with examples. And that's it for this one. Hopefully you all found this useful and you stuck around this long, so you should probably leave a like and subscribe for more original species videos. But before we go, we have to thank the supporters who helped make this and other videos possible. People like Colorado Blue, Vaderson, Borfi, Series, Linky, Ninja-san, and Blonsk. Thanks to them, I can keep doing cool stuff like this and not have to worry about YouTube's ever-tightening grip on its creators and content choking the life out of me and my creativity. If you want to help, you can become a patron on Patreon by going to bit.ly/SeraProtoP. And you get all sorts of neat rewards back, like a discount on the premium version of My Species Bond. Whatever you pay to the Patreon is how much you get off the cost. So you can save 10%, 50%, or even 100%. But, for now, I'll see you all later. Bye!